system on to record. Right, okay, so welcome, good afternoon everyone. Welcome to this session on evaluation, which I personally think is one of the key skills we learn at Toastmasters. I know we learn many skills that are obvious in terms of leadership and speaking, but evaluation to me is one of the most powerful we will learn. It's both powerful in the club, but it's powerful in the business. And I want to draw in the ways that this evaluation will help you in your business as we go through. If you wanted any evidence, then I think a really good place to start is watching the TED speech by Bill Gates, which is Speakers Need Feedback. And to start with, he introduces the woman who has the world's most photographed back of her head. And that's his bridge coach, because every time you see Bill Gates playing bridge, his coach is right behind him. And of course, she can't interfere with the game, but afterwards she gives him detailed feedback because he desperately wants to improve. And I'm sure that's why evaluation and feedback is called the food of champions, because it is the way that we all grow. Later on in that TED speech, you'll see he goes on to talk specifically about teachers and their need for evaluations, which happens quite rarely, I think, in this country. It's also quite rare in America, apparently. And he showed where America was in the world rankings of academic achievements, and it was number 15. What was really interesting is that America has no formal feedback system for its teachers, but 11 out of the 14 countries that rank higher than America all have formal feedback systems so that their teachers get high quality feedback. So for me, it is an essential skill in Toastmasters. It's an essential skill in your organization. And I hope in this next 50 minutes that I'm going to help you develop it, because if you do, it will help all the people in your Toastmasters club. If you can give great feedback, you'll be highly popular because people will seek you out to get that opinion. If you can take that skill into the business, then you'll find that your work colleagues will improve. And again, they will come to seek your advice because they know you'll give them clear, good help to go forwards. But most of all, you'll find it will help you, because it's almost impossible to develop this skill as a good evaluator and not improve yourself in the subject that you're going to evaluate people on. So what I want to do today is give you some tools and techniques that will help you both develop as an evaluator, and some tips that you can take away and you start using straight away in your evaluations when you go back into your club. And we're going to do that in 3 sessions. The first block I'm going to do is going to be about how to develop the key information that you need in order to give high quality evaluations. The second block is a bit about delivery, which is certain to help you in your club, but also it's very worthwhile if you're going to enter the competitions. And the last block is to show you how these skills can go into the workplace, but mainly how to use them wisely when you're in the workplace, because evaluating in the workplace is not the same as evaluating as a Toastmasters club. As Elizabeth says, you are just welcome to ask your questions. Just print them in the chat and Elizabeth will help me moderate them. I'm going to stop after each block and just check and see if we've got any questions, so that we don't just try to accumulate everything to the end. So as soon as you think of a question, drop it in there and Elizabeth will pick it up. Also going with this session, there was a whole series of notes, which I know James sent out, but and he's also dropped in the chat. But the key in there is that you need the tip sheet, which is the last one. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop the tip sheet in there. So if you haven't got those notes available, you should be able to see that. It's just the last sheet. And it's the bit we're going to focus on during this session. And it's certainly the bit we're going to focus on right now, because this is the core of building effective evaluation skills. If you've got that sheet in front of you, this is not about competitions, although your competitions will benefit. What I want you really to do is develop as an excellent evaluator, because if you do that, you will find success in the competitions comes as an automatic byproduct. You cannot be good at it and fail to do well in the competitions. And for me, there are three tips, three keys to an effective evaluation. That is tips, tips, and tips. Now, I know that may sound odd, but what happens in Toastmasters, and I've seen it time and time again, is people think of giving tips as the recommendation back to the speaker. But I want to encourage you to think differently, because tips, your commendations, are also tips for the rest of the audience. And I don't want your evaluation speeches just to be about commend, recommend, commend, so that the commends are patting the speaker on the back, the recommends are showing them how they can improve, and the third lot of commends, or second lot of commends. I want you to think of the commends as a tip to the rest of the audience when you're delivering it. Now, I have my own favorite way of delivering evaluations, and that is I speak to the audience with the speaker in the third person during the commends, and to the speaker directly in the recommends, and you'll see why that is a bit later. I know there's lots of debates in Toastmasters. Some people say use the third person through all the way. Some people say use the first person through all the way. I've never found an absolute answer to this within Toastmasters. And in fact, when I was in the competition in 2005, I asked lots of people what was the right way, and only one person gave me a concrete answer, and that was Mike Silverman. He said it's 50-50. So you can't win. But that's the way I prefer to do it, because I think of my commends as a gift specifically to the speaker, so I speak to them. So 3 sets of tips, but you've got to work out how to do them. And I want you to develop your own tips over the fullness of time. But what I've done is I've given you mine on that tip sheet, sheet 8 in the notes, because that's where I started. And let me just move my screen a second, because bits have gone missing. When you come to pick the things that you want to do, do not reinvent the wheel, because Toastmasters has given us lots and lots of information over time. And it's best to use it. Now, I don't know about you, but when I joined, I got 2 valuable little books. Here they are. Your Voice Speaks and Your Body Speaks, Body Gestures. Now, I don't know whether you get those nowadays. In my day, they used to arrive directly in the pack when you joined Toastmasters. But if you didn't get them, they are available on the Toastmasters International website free of charge. You can just download them. And in the notes, I've put a link that will take you straight to the Toastmasters website so you can download your own copy. So these were absolutely brilliant in giving me background information, but they weren't the end, because Toastmasters produces many courses and documents that will help you. And here are some of the ones that I used as I was building up my evaluation skill: the leadership excellence skill, effective evaluation, evaluate to motivate. They are just loaded with them. So go through the Toastmasters literature and pick out the documents that will give you the ability to create your own tip sheet. And never forget, of course, over here, the Toastmasters magazine. It just so happened in 2005, the year that I was going to focus on evaluation, that the January edition of the Toastmaster magazine, and here it is, you might just be able to see it up there, everything you need to know about effective evaluation. Wonderful, just what I wanted. That was just like a gift. But if you go through the Toastmaster magazine every month, you will get packs of good advice on how to evaluate effectively. What we need to do is develop that tip sheet, and you'll see that there are 3 columns to it. So the first column is about the attributes of a speech, and this applies if you want to evaluate in the workplace. If you want to evaluate someone's skills that are not Toastmaster skills, you've got to start in the same place. You need to work out what are the attributes by which you are going to measure their performance. Now, we're going to focus probably mainly in here on what we hear, because we can't go through the whole sheet today. But going back to that booklet that I got on your vocal variety, at the back of it, you get this sheet, and this sheet tells you all the attributes of good vocal variety. And you can see the blue headings, the dark blue headings down the side, and I picked them up. Your voice quality, your volume, your pace, your pitch, whether you use pauses, and your clarity and enunciation working down there, perhaps not in the same order as they are on my sheet. But what I did with mine was I went through that list and I made that the basis of my list. And there's my list with the delivery in yellow, the bits in yellow. So that's giving me the attributes that I'm looking for when I'm listening to somebody speak. So that's the first step. But then we need a bit more. It's no good just saying, well, we need to measure pace or we need to measure pitch quality. What does that mean? Well, again, if you go back to these Toastmasters magazines, and that one in particular, you'll see at the back what they've done is given you a scale. And at one end of the scale, and I think it's the left, my screen's in reverse, so I can't quite tell, but I think it's the left, they give you the attributes that want improvement, and on the right, they give you the good attributes. I actually want it the other way around. I prefer to go from good to needs improvement. So you'll see if you look at column 2 on my list, that in that voice, I've picked up good is a clear and mellow voice. Perhaps needs improvement is if it's harsh and nasal. Now, these characteristics of the attributes are really important because they'll be the bits that you notice in your evaluation. You will not sit there and think, what is the pitch like? You'll sit there and think, oh, this is a bit one-paced. And so it's those characteristics that you will notice. Whilst you're very welcome to use mine, and I've already suggested that you go on and develop your own, what developing your own will do is embed these factors in your mind. And it's much easier than reading someone else's sheet if you've gone to the trouble of developing it. You can see underneath that volume, I think, is in there. Is the volume well projected and vibrant, or is it quiet and inaudible? Once that middle column is populated, you now have the characteristics that you are going to spot when you listen and watch somebody speak in your Toastmasters club. But the most important of the lot for me is the last column, because the last column is tips. And remember, I said it's about tips, tips, tips. And the tips are a positive way of improving. Or in fact, if it's in the commend, if you've seen the speaker do something, you can show the audience how they can do it as well. So the tips will help you with that. Now, again, if we go back to the vocal variety ones I've got up there, you'll see that we have, well, I think you want the third column. Here's the third column, and I'm just going to duck out the way a bit. So the third column's in place now. So if you've got people with poor vocal quality, how are you going to help them to improve? Well, the tip I've put in there is exercises before speaking. And I don't know about you, but I've got a set of exercises that I do every time before I speak. And you do drills with your voice, and it loosens up the larynxes before you speak. It makes you sound like you've gone completely potty if someone hears you doing it, but don't worry about that. And do those exercises, and it improves your speech. So that's a great tip. If you hear someone whose voice needs improving, you can give them the tip to go away and develop that. And I think that's the key, that the tips have to have a positive way of improvement. If you look further down there, I have to tell you, this is one of the most popular in there. You will probably see clarity and enunciation, and it says practice with a cork in your mouth. Now that may seem a bit odd, but I always have my cork around. It's always on the bookshelf, and you pop it in your mouth, and then you practice speaking with the cork in your mouth, And then when you take it out, you'll find your enunciation is enormously better. And that's because we're really, really lazy creatures. We've got this big, strong jaw muscle, which wags up and down and will control our mouth. And so we get used to speaking with the jaw muscle and not with the facial muscles that control enunciation. Well, if you put a cork in your mouth and speak like that, you can't use your jaw muscles, so you have to use the ones around your mouth. And you'll find when you take it away, your enunciation has improved. I have come to the theory that I think some people like that tip because they think they have to empty the wine bottle first. But let me just say, if that happens, it's unlikely to improve your enunciation. So that third column is about building tips that we can give when we're in evaluation, listening to the speaker. Instead of saying what they could do better, we show them how they could do it better. And then they'll go away and be more likely to use it. How are we going to get these tips if you don't just use mine? Well, we copy them. We copy them from other Toastmasters. That's what I've done in my entire 27 years in Toastmasters. And in fact, very early on in my career, I heard someone give advice to a speaker who was waving their arms about and said, just imagine you're stood there holding 2 shopping bags in your hands. And if you do that, you'll find your arms lie at the natural position to speak. And so I've picked that tip up and I've used it ever since. I said you can use mine, particularly the wine cork. You'll find that's very popular if you use that. But the other thing you can do is you can make up your own. I once went to a meeting and there was a chap speaking and he was walking around, and I know many of you are too young to remember the Shadows, but the Shadows were a musical band and they used to march forward and backwards round in a big square during the entirety of their song. And this bloke just looked like he was in the Shadows. He was just marching around the front in a square. And I thought, what am I going to give him as a tip? And I thought about it and I said, I know. I suggest that next time you speak, you bring your doormat in from home and stand on it. And then every time you step off, you'll remember that you shouldn't be moving. And next time I saw him on the program, I got there to listen to him speak and he hadn't brought a doormat. But fortunately, I brought mine and I put it on the floor and I said, every time you step off that, I'm going to knock a point off what you do. So, and he stood on it and he only tried to get off it a couple of times and very quickly it got him down. So it can be great fun thinking of positive ways that people can improve. And it's a practical measure. It's not an observation. So those are the 3 columns that you need in order to develop the knowledge that you need to give high quality evaluations. And I'm just wondering, have any questions come through yet, Elizabeth, that we need to answer before we move on?
No questions yet, Bob.
Okay. Well, if you have any questions about that section and about developing the list of tips in order to give people, then you're very welcome just to drop them in and we can go back and pick those up later if you want. Right. So we'll move on to the second phase, which is about delivery that is going to help you both in the club, but it's certainly going to help you in the competition. Now, to start with, you're going to need to take notes fairly quickly. Notes are critical for a good evaluator, and it can be hard to be looking down and writing and looking up and listening. So you've got to develop this skill. So in order to develop the skill, I'm going to make a suggestion. I'm going to say from now on, when you go to a club, do not go as a toastie. From now on, I want you to go as a super toastie. And you might be thinking, well, what's the difference between a toastie and a super toastie, Bob? So don't type it in the chat box because I'm going to tell you anyway. Toasties go to a meeting to do what the agenda tells them they're going to do. Super toasties go to do everything they can. Now, obviously, you can't deliver all the speeches. That's impractical, but you can evaluate every speech. And you can evaluate every table topic. And in fact, once you're experienced, you can do every table topic as it's listed. And all that does is make these skills automatic, that repetition. So when I go to the club, I take a logbook and I'm an engineer, so that's what our left hands are for. We always had logbooks in our left hand when we wandered around. But when I write my notes, I write them like this. And I write down what I observed or heard or felt or thought. And next to it, I put either a C or an R for commend or recommend. And you can see it's heavily biased towards commend. And I always do that. I always aim for just a couple of recommends. And the rest is commends. As I pick them up, next to it, I'll put perhaps a hint of what I saw, so that when I refer back to it, I'm not talking in a general terms. I can say, did you see the speaker do this? And I can remember one of Elizabeth's speeches now that I used to illustrate her great body language when she was talking about one of her African tours and going to a place, a big swimming pool where the hippos were, and moving across the stage. And it was a great example. So I made a note of it. And that's all I do. I note down those points so that when I come to do my evaluation, I can just put numbers down the side, 1 to 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and number 7 is the summary. And the summary we'll find is incredibly important very shortly. And that makes it quick to take your notes. Now, when I deliver them, I don't always deliver them like that. Sometimes I put them on pink notes, and here you can see one in my hand. These come out of a sheet of pink card. I use pink because when they sit in the palm of your hands, they don't show a flash of white if you move your hands like a white card does. I experiment, of course, with colors. I've got buff ones. I try to find ones that closely match my skin as much as I can so that you don't see anything. And you just note down, there you are, you can see them on there. This one happens to be the last one of evaluation. So there are 2 C's for commend and an S for summary on there. And that will just sit in the palm of my hand and I can use it. So putting the number next to these commends and recommends means that very quickly I can have my evaluation ready. In fact, probably by the time the speaker sat down, I could be ready to go. Now, in the competition, you'll find that's really, you only get 5 minutes after the speaker's spoken to write your evaluation. And I have seen speakers writing essays in the room afterwards, trying to write their evaluation out in full. Don't do that. Use simple bullet point notes in the palm of your hand. As always in Toastmasters, there is sometimes a drive to not use notes, and some people are very good at it. Simon Bucknell, I know, is very good at it. He worked with a hostage negotiator who said, you haven't got time to take notes, you've got to observe and take it all in your head. And Simon practiced that skill, and in fact, he's incredibly good at it. However, I've also seen really good evaluators start off with a tremendous evaluation, and they get to the second commend and they've forgotten what it is. And that whole fragmentation ruins their opportunity in the competition. So I say always have a little aid memoir that you can use in your speech. If you don't need them, you don't need them. If you do need them, it's just a brief look down to pick up the next point and you're off again. So I made a habit of writing down the evaluation of every speech I did, like a super toasty. And in fact, here's the inside of my logbook. And I don't know if you can see it, but there's a whole series of speeches there. It starts with Davina here. It obviously goes across 2 meetings because Davina was up here. Brian Hunt, Elizabeth will recognize some of these names. Davina again, so she must have done another one. Dawna, and there's one here, Elizabeth. Look, Elizabeth in the middle. There's one of your evaluations, Elizabeth. And I just, no, you can't see it, James. I'm moving it back so that you can't see it. But I evaluate every speech with just this simple CC-RRCC pattern, putting it down the margins. It's really easy, and you will be amazed how often you're not the evaluator for the speaker. But if you're a respected speaker, someone will come up to you and say, have you got any ideas where I can improve? And if you've done that in your book, then you've always got that information just to flick back to, and I could flick back meetings. You know, people would come and say, oh, did you see my speech last month? And it would be in my logbook and I could help them out. I said this is a really useful skill for meetings, for business as well. And it is. If you adopt this habit in meetings, you'll be amazed how your standing and perhaps your career grows. I make a habit of sitting in meetings, and when people raise points, I make a note of the point and a C or an R, whether I like it or I think it wants further work. And then if someone turns to you and says, well, Bob, what's your impression on this project? You very quickly have a look down and you can say, well, I think this is a really good initiative. It's obviously going to take the company in good places. And I love the way that the research has been put together. Personally, I'd like to see more research into this area to see if it's going to cost us more money further down the line. And you will be amazed. People will be absolutely amazed that you can feedback on a project that quickly with this skill. And in fact, as Elizabeth says, I was an engineer. The last 20 years of my career was in the space industry. And I used to have meetings with the European Space Agency, ESA. We used to come, it used to be big meetings, probably about 15, 16 people around the table. And my colleagues used to take the mickey in a very well-natured way. And they would say, how is it when you speak, everyone stops and listens? And when I speak, they carry on like nothing's happening. And the reason is people get used to the fact that if you speak little and often with this concise form of evaluation, then people will stop and listen because they know it's going to make sense and it's going to give high value. So again, not just for Toastmasters, this skill, use it in your business meetings and you'll find it will work wonders. There's a lot of information in the tip sheet and a lot of skill in writing your notes quickly. And that's going to be incredibly hard for you to go away from this session, go back to your clubs and start doing all that straight away. So I suggest you don't. Start doing it bit by bit. So perhaps the next meeting you go to, have a look at my tip sheet on Heard, the top one, and say, today, all I'm going to do is evaluate every speaker on what I hear. And just work yourself in that top section of the tip sheet, do everyone on Heard. And then the next meeting you go to, you can say, all right, this meeting, I'm going to do everything I saw. And what you'll find is you will do everything you saw because it's what you're focused on, but you will not help of observing all the things that have to do with hearing that you did in the last meeting. And gradually, those skills will build. If you just focus on a little bit and make the skill good, you'll find they become a natural part of what you do. And same with table topics as well. Table topics can be hard to evaluate. And at Hertfordshire, we've used something that I brought into Hertfordshire actually from Cornerstone Communicators, because I got fed up as the president of the table topics evaluator overshooting their time. And so I changed the way we did table topics to what I called hot topics, where the table topics master took out a name and said, this is the person speaking. And when the person speaking had finished, they pulled out another name and said, this is the person doing an evaluation. And you only got 45 seconds to do your evaluation. So commend, recommend, commend, concise, short and to the point. And by doing that, people built up the skill that's going to prove useful, you'll see in a minute, of speaking to 45-second segments. And it meant that all the table topics evaluations started to come out on time because people were being far briefer and better with their comments. So, but if that's a lot for you, do every third table topics. Do the first one, do the fourth one, do the seventh one if there is one. And then when you feel you've got the hang of that, do every other one, first, third, fifth, seventh. And then when you feel confident, go for everyone. So don't try to do this all at once. Build up the skills piecemeal so that they add together and you grow every time you do these exercises. Sorry, Elizabeth, you're waving a hand.
Apologies. I cannot see a question, but I do have a question for you.
All right, go on, sure.
Yeah, as you know, Pathways has an evaluation form.
Right.
And although it's still roughly recommend, commend, no, sorry, commend, recommend, commend, it asks 3 precise questions.
Yeah.
What you excelled at.
Yeah.
What you may want to work on.
Yeah.
And to challenge yourself.
Yeah.
Could you speak to that in the context of how to do the evaluations the best way possible?
Yeah, I think if you do your evaluation this way, so you've got a list of commends and recommends down there, you will find you've got the information to put in that evaluation sheet automatically from that information. So when I do it, when I'm evaluating someone in a club meeting, I don't use that sheet. I use my method to deliver it, but when I come to write it, I then look at the notes I've got. So you'll find that perhaps one recommend is something straightforward that somebody could do. So that might be something they could do better. But one of your recommends might be a tough ask, and that would be something to challenge them. So you could use your recommends in order to give them something to improve on and something to challenge on. It's going to come up a little bit later anyway, but what I'd just like to say at this stage is when I'm giving a verbal evaluation, I never give more than 2 recommends. I always stick to that. Sometimes I do one. In the competition in 2005, I only gave 1 recommendation because I felt it was so important that I explained it properly to the audience that I gave a single recommendation, and obviously they liked it. Go on, you're waving a hand again, Elizabeth.
I am, because there's a question in the chat, and it's one I have observed across District 71.
Yeah.
I think there are very few clubs who evaluate table topics.
Right.
They find it very surprising. Would you like to comment on the value of evaluating table topics?
Yeah, it's incredibly valuable. Firstly, if you're the topics, so there are 2 sorts of value you get out of it. The value you get out of it as a hot topics session, which I've just described, where after every topic speaker, you get a topics evaluator, is wonderful because no one in the room can relax. And we've been known in our club to pull someone's name out more than once. So you cannot relax at any stage. You might be called on to speak, or you might be asked to give a second evaluation, which sounds unfair, but that's the way life is sometimes. So we do that, and it means everyone is attentive during the entire table topic session. Nobody can get the first topic and sit back and think, oh, well, I've done mine now, so I'll just chill out for the rest of the session. Everyone is riveted. And I think the skill of giving feedback to somebody in 45 seconds is incredibly valuable, both for the club, but certainly for competitions. If you're the table topics evaluator in its entirety and you've got to do them all, it is, I think, one of the toughest tasks in Toastmasters. But if you've had the opportunity to do individual ones for 45 seconds, you should find doing the whole table topic session not much more of a challenge. What you have to do is just put commend, recommend, commend for every speaker and just write in your points and then deliver those points succinctly. So has that answered the question? I can see Declan's comment there about they don't do it. It's always happened in the clubs I've been in, so I can't comment about other clubs, but you've got wider experience, Elizabeth.
Oh, I do. And as I said, I'm amazed. I suggested it to one club and they were absolutely horrified. They said there's nothing to evaluate in a table topic.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, but I think the good thing about what you're saying, and this is very thoughtful considerations, and I think we can share it with others, because I agree with you. I'm from your club, I'm from your school, I'm from Bob's school of thought. So I know the value of being able to evaluate in 45 seconds.
Yeah.
As well as, you know,
it's not only really evaluate, but
yeah,
you will be called on, not just in Toastmasters, but the point of table topics is, again, as I was going back to, when you're in a meeting and somebody asks you a question, fires a question at you, what they want is a short, concise answer. And table topics is the skill of building very quickly good quality answers. And so as a table topics evaluator, what you're doing is listening to the quality of the person who's spoken and being able to give feedback. And that always improves your ability to speak yourself. Is that enough for that, Elizabeth? Okay, let's move on then. The last bits on delivery of evaluation. I want you to remember two things. Well, one thing really with 2 points. When you give feedback, what you are giving is a gift. That's it. I think presentations are called like that because we should give presents. And an evaluation feedback is a gift for the speaker, but it needs to be delivered in the sense of a gift. So the first thing about a gift is it's optional whether you accept it. You know what happens? Someone brings you around and says, here you are, Bob, here's a nice cut glass decanter. And I'm thinking, I'm not sticking that thing in my house. You have the option to go straight down the road and give it to the charity shop because you're not interested. And I think all tips that you offer, which after all are just your own opinion, no matter how experienced you are optional. And I think the way you do that is you put phrases in like, perhaps next time you might like to think about, or have you ever thought if this would be a good approach or a better approach? Because those sort of phrases make it clear to the speaker that what you're giving them is your thoughts, but it's up to them whether they think it's a good value in their speech. So that's genuinely in the sense of a gift. And the second attribute it needs is it must have a positive way to improve, a positive method. You've got to tell them how, not what you don't like, not why you don't like it. Tell people how to improve so that they can go away and improve. Last bit about delivery I want to talk about is timing, because timing, especially in competitions, is absolutely dire. I see more people disqualified in competitions for timing in evaluations than anything else. I went to, where was it? Sligo. When we went to the one at Sligo, do you remember that? 5 out of the 8 disqualified on timing. What a disaster that was, because people couldn't control their timing. And number one problem is that people spend too long waxing lyrical about the first commend. They want to gloss up the speaker and give all the good things, but they spend far too long about it. So when you're, let me just move to the side. When you're giving an evaluation, here's a typical structure. Remember I said 45 seconds is a magic figure. So these first 2 commends, commend, you ideally want in 45 seconds, but I've allowed up to a minute on this structure. But ideally you want to get them out in 45 seconds. And those can still be really good. They can really explain what the speaker did well to the audience in 45 seconds. You just don't want to spend your time dribbling on. And by the way, particularly in competitions, don't waste valuable evaluations saying hello to everyone. Mr. District Governor, fellow district governors, this and that. You know, first 30 seconds gone before you get into the evaluation. Get straight into it. Fellow Toastmasters, did you notice how? And you're straight in. And by the way, by using things like did you notice, you'll find you suck your audience into your evaluation. They'll start thinking about your evaluation. So get those 2 commendations out in this 45-second or minute maximum. Then straight into your recommendations. And that gives you a minute to do your recommendations. And now you're in control of the time, because when that minute is up, the green light will come on. And then you know you've got 30 seconds to go back to more commendations. Give your last couple of commendations briefly, and then the amber light will go on, which tells you it's time for the summary. Now, this is a very important moment in competitions, because every judge that's watching you has a form, and on it, it says 15 marks for summary. And so as soon as you see that amber light, the words coming out of your mouth should be in summary, because then every judge will go, oh, they've done a summary, 15 marks. And you don't want to throw away marks too easily. So make sure they know that you're delivering the summary. You'll see on my tips list at the bottom, there are some summary words. I'm not a big fan, I must admit, of the technique of regurgitating what you've already told him, including the recommends in your summary. And so I tend to look for a positive finish that generally addresses how they've prepared it. So this clearly was a well-researched practiced and delivered speech. And then I like to tell them about the value to the audience that showed us how we can go on and do whatever it is. And then the last bit, something positive for the speaker, and it shows the speaker has the greatest asset a speaker can have to deliver a serious point with humorous content, whatever the point is. So very brief, 30 seconds, and the red light will go on and you'll be off the stage and everything will be fine. And if you practice doing this in the club, you'll find it becomes second nature. But the key is this first section. Do not let this first section run on too long. Learn to speak on commendation for under a minute and move on. And then you'll be all right with the competition. Are there any more questions cropped up while we've been?
No more questions.
Oh, Declan's put another one. Is the evaluator know ahead of the topic, or is it anyone that can be called impromptu? This is, I take it, Declan, for impromptu speaking. Nobody knows. That's the beauty of table topics. Nobody knows what's coming up, and it keeps you all on your toes, which is exactly what it should do. So I see I've just got a couple of minutes. I just wanted to check 12:55. You want me finished by, Elizabeth? Is that correct?
Yes. You've got another sort of 8-10 minutes. Yeah,
that's great. I want to address, we'll just keep an eye on any further questions, how you use this in the workplace, because I think there's a couple of important differences between using this skill in the workplace and using it in Toastmasters. The first thing I want you to think about is making sure that your feedback is in context to A, the speaker, and B, the value of the information they're giving. So A, with the speaker, I told you that I never give more than 2 recommendations in a speech. And I have seen people give evaluations where they've got about 4 or 5 recommendations, and you can see the speaker sort of slipping down in their speech under the burden of all these recommendation coming out. We have a saying in speaking, if you give the audience a choice, they'll make none. So the very best thing you can do is give them one thing to go away and focus on, because there's a good chance they'll go and do that. I think 2 is all right. There may be a chance they'll do both, but 2 is reasonable feedback, and we like 2 commends in there. But any more than that, and they will get overwhelmed and they will make no choice. You will probably find they make no improvement whatsoever. So when you're thinking of your speaker, think of what will help them. Pick the best thing that you can give them that will make the biggest improvement, and worry about the rest later on if they come back and they still have other areas that need improvement. The second thing is make it relevant to the value. And years ago, 2008, I think, I used to organize the Professional Speaking Association conferences. And one of our speakers was Alan Weiss, who is a mega star of public speaking in America. And I offered to pick Alan up from Heathrow free of charge and take him to the Belfry, which meant for the little bit of petrol going to Heathrow, I got 2 hours of Alan Weiss in my car for nothing, which was just incredible. Alan's content is like gold dust. In those days, 2008, I know he was charging $28,000 a day to speak. He was a big star in America. And I said to him in the car going up there, I said, oh, yes, I'm in Toastmasters. And he went, tuh. And I said, Alan, that's not a very positive reaction to the Toastmasters name. I said, why was that? And he said, the trouble is they learn to evaluate, but they evaluate everything irrelevant of the value of the content. And he said, I'll bet you when we get there, there'll be someone comes up with some inane evaluation of my speech. And I said, oh, well, we'll see. But anyway, we got there. Alan was up on stage for an hour and a half. This was just gold dust coming out of his mouth. I can tell you as a starting speaker, how much value there was in what he was saying. And then we finished, we went for a coffee. And as I walked in, he grabbed me by the arm and he pulled me over. And he said, there you are, what did I tell you? And I said, what's happened, Alan? He said, that bloke, and I knew who it was. It was a Toastmaster, I'm ashamed to say. He said, after I finished, he came up and he said, do you know, when you move your arms like this, I don't understand what you're saying, but if you keep them by your side, I take it all in. Do you know what that means? And Alan said, yes, you've got a learning disability. Alan is very acerbic. He doesn't take prisoners when he speaks to people. But his point was well made, because Alan's hand gestures were completely irrelevant to the immense value of his speech. And so as a good evaluator, particularly in the workplace, you've got to think, what is this person doing of value to us and the organization? And what feedback can I help them to achieve that goal? Not what random piece of feedback can I give them about their body language or stage movement, but what can I help them achieve their goal? And then if you do that, they'll take it on board. I would say one other thing as well. Think about the timing of your feedback. It's all right in Toastmasters, the meeting dictates we have a speech and you get your feedback straight away. And that's the way it is, and we all accept it. When you're in the workplace or outside, you'll find people will speak and they'll do a good job, a decent job. Everyone will enjoy it. And you'll find the non-Toastmasters are going up and saying, oh, thanks very much for that. I learned a lot. That was really good. Thanks for doing the presentation. The last thing they want to hear is somebody going up and saying, yes, but your hand gestures could be a bit better and you could do this a bit better. That is not the right time. I always make a rule, if it's outside the Toastmasters Club, when the speech is finished, let them reflect in the glory of the achievement of what they've done. And I only say positive commends to them. And the speakers that want to improve will say, have you got any tips you can give me? And generally I say, not that I can think of at the moment, but I'll go back through my notes and we can have a catch up later if you're interested. And then you'll find later they're receptive, they'll take the feedback on board. But if you do it when everyone else is patting them on the back and saying, well done, it's like sticking a thorn in their side. So think about the timing when you give it to people. So there we are. I'm almost done now. I can't see any questions coming up. So I'll go to the conclusion. This, I can tell you, is an immensely powerful technique, both in the workplace and in Toastmasters, and it's great. One note of caution, be careful who you teach it to. Because in 2005, I took my wife to the competition, and 2 days later, I was hanging up the washing when she came up alongside me and said, Bob, I have a suggestion for you. I thought, damn, she's learned how to do it. So be careful, because everyone can use it and it's really effective. It will pay big dividends. It will pay dividends to all the people you've got in your Toastmasters Club by bringing them on with excellent evaluation. You'll find it will benefit your work colleagues. And if you run a team, it's a great way to help your team grow. But lastly, it will help you, because by working through this, you will understand what makes good performance, and you cannot help but improve your performance as a result. So yes, there's quite a bit of work to do to be good at it, but the dividends are good. And I hope that you all get to enjoy those, both in the Toastmasters Club and in your workplace. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Can I ask everyone please to unmute and give Bob a massive round of applause? Bob talked to Alan giving to himself, but he's got this platinum dust.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. I know people may be a little bit shy, but there's no need. We're in company of Toastmasters, family and friends. So if you've got any final questions for Bob, please can you put your digital hand up and ask the question. If not, I know you've all got to run back to work, so we've got a couple of things to do before we close. So any final questions before we...
There is incidentally an email at the back of the notes, Elizabeth. So anyone who comes up with a question afterwards is welcome just to drop me an email if they wish.
Excellent. That's really good.
Yeah, okay. I do have a quick question. Sorry.
Okay, please ask the question.
Yeah, Charles.
It's Charles. Yeah. What we've tried to do in our club sometimes is have two evaluators, one looking only at one only listening and one only looking at body language. And that, is that a good idea, or does that just complicate things?
That is a great idea, Charles. And in fact, if I were running a full workshop, so with an audience, what I generally do is have a test speaker and split the audience into 4. So each of them is doing one of the segments off my tip sheets, and then get each portion of the audience to feedback just about what they're watching. And that is a great way to build skills. And also, because you've got 2 evaluators, you'll also find that the speaker gets sort of two types of feedback, two perspectives. So that's a great move. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, conscious of time. So can I hand back to you, please, Mr. Coordinator James, to continue with the agenda as we close.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth, and thank you, Bob. As I've said in the notes, I've got my cork and my doormat ready to be a super toasty from now on.
Fantastic.
I'm going to put a monkey survey in the chat if you wouldn't mind completing before you leave. But could I ask Danny Banks, as our Club Growth Director, to perhaps propose a vote of thanks to Bob on our behalf?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, Bob. I've got a few minutes to comment on all that you've shared with us today, and I don't think I've got enough time, but it was just, I think, from my experience in Toastmasters, evaluation is the key to everything else, because if you evaluate a speech, it helps you with your speeches, it helps you with your table topics, it helps you pick out useful ideas. And when you said at the beginning about teachers and being evaluated, I was a teacher for 27 years, and we did have a form of evaluation, but it wasn't quality evaluation. And it almost put me off Toastmasters, because I saw, oh, Toastmasters evaluate. Well, I have enough of that at school. I don't really want any more of that, until I realized this, what evaluation truly is. It's not a sort of critical thing, and you emphasize that so succinctly for me today, that it's about helping people. It's a gift, and that's one of the things I'll take away. There's just so much, and in the notes that you've shared with us, there's just so much to help us there. But for me, the one key takeaway is this idea of yours, that it is a gift you're giving to somebody. You're helping them. You're not deconstructing them. You are giving them tips for how to improve next time. And that was the eye-opener for me in Toastmasters, that it wasn't what I'd experienced in my career. And so it was quite a personal thing when you said that at the beginning, because I did reflect on what it was. And you've shown us how useful the evaluation is and how it can be employed in the workplace. It's not just about evaluating speeches at Toastmasters. It's about how do you put that into your personal life? How do you improve your evaluation of people if you have to do performance management in your business? So that was another fantastic takeaway, that you linked it into people's personal career lives and how valuable this is. And I think, we've all got to go away now and have a think about what you've said, have a read through what you've said, but it certainly was an hour well spent, and I've made lots of notes. I wasn't an engineer, but I always do keep a notebook, and I've made plenty of notes to take away from that. So thank you so much, and I'd like to thank you for giving up your time this lunchtime to deliver that session, and I'm quite convinced we've all learned so much from it. So thank you. Elizabeth did say that I had one other thing I could say about club growth. We, in Dublin on the 13th of January, which is a Friday the 13th. I hope that's not nothing special. We are having a corporate clubs breakfast session, and we're going to try and invite as many businesses that are in the Dublin area to come along and find out about Toastmasters and how it can help their businesses. Like Bob has just said, how you could use your evaluation in your personal work life. So if there are if any of you are in Dublin or around Dublin on the 13th and would like to come, it's a breakfast meeting. The final details we're going to be sending out. But what I would ask is, if you belong to any organization, a trade organization that's based in Dublin or a business park, if you could perhaps advertise it to your colleagues that don't have a Toastmasters, because they're missing out on things like Bob's presentation today and all that Toastmasters can offer. So details will be coming out. So thank you very much for that. And I'll pass back over to James. And once again, thank you, Bob,
Thanks,
for your
Danny.
presentation.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Bob, especially. Can I just remind people of the individual club officer training that starts in January? We have Pathways Essentials in February. We have Speech Structures in March. And we have the Distinguished Club Program in April and a guest speaker in May. These will all be forwarded to you as soon as possible. We also have the D71 Part 2 starting on the 3rd of December from 9:30 to 1 o'clock. It only remains for me to thank, on your behalf, Elizabeth, Danny, but most especially you, Bob. It's been wonderful. And we'll see you next time, hopefully. Thank you very much. Do the Survey Monkey. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, bye.
Thanks very much for coming, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Brilliant session.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Bye,
Bob.
Danny.
Bye,
Yeah.
Elizabeth.
Bye, Bob. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Anne.
Bye.
Oh, Bob, that was wonderful.
Okay, before you go, I thought it went really well, Bob.
Oh, it was
I'm surprised I didn't ask any more questions. I'm sure I had tons of questions, but it was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Okay, good.
absolutely. It's actually set them up now. They
Yeah,
can't.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
And I think a future visit, it'd be good to do what you said. Do the one where you do the split us into little groups after hearing the speech. That could be part 2 that we could do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. That's when I do this, you know, if it's an evening one in a Toastmaster,
Yeah.
rather than just speak, I do this and we get the
I
tips,
know.
split them up. You must have been in one where I've done
Oh,
that.
I have. Yeah.
Yeah, and then everyone starts to get the hang of it before they go home, which is really good.
Yes.
That's it. They're putting it into practice straight away.
Putting it into
It's
practice,
going
yeah.
straight in. Oh, that was lovely, Bob. Absolutely
Brilliant.
perfectly pitched.
Good. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much, Bob, and thanks very much, James. We'll catch up and we'll do a debrief.
Yeah, we should
Perfect.
have a catch up as well, James. We were going to have one after the last conference.
We were. Well, do you know what, Bob? We'll have it at this conference.
Is that Liverpool?
It is.
Liverpool.
Oh yeah, we'll be
Liverpool.
going to Liverpool.
Oh, good.
Brilliant.
Yes.
And of
Maybe
course, I'm
talk-
always happy to do anything.
I know. We'll be talking to you about a workshop.
Don't worry, your name has
Don't
already
worry.
been mentioned.
All right.
Talk
Okay.
soon, Bob. Yeah.
Good to see you
Bye-bye.
both.
All the best, lads.
Yeah.
Bye-bye
Bye now.
now.
Bye-bye.